Thank you for listening to this PodcastOne production. Now available on Apple Podcasts, PodcastOne, Spotify, and anywhere else you get your podcasts.
The following program is a PodcastOne.com production.
From Hollywood, California, by way of the Broken Skull Ranch, this is the Steve Austin Show.
Give me a hell yeah.
Hell yeah. Now, here's Steve Austin.
Hey, man, let me tell you a little bit about my guest today. His name is Jerry Only. He's the bass player for the punk rock band, the Misfits. Now, I tell you what, the Misfits are an iconic band. They've been around for over 28 years. And growing up down in South Texas, I think the first 8-track I ever bought was Earth, Wind, and Fire. And then, you know, I kind of missed the punk wave. I just went through Cameo, Confunction, all those, that wasn't R&B. I went through all those bands, and then I got into more of the hair bands. But my wife is a huge punk rock fan, and it's like she was in the other room, and she was sending me all these questions to ask Jerry Only of the Misfits. And Jerry sent me a bunch of CDs. And I'll tell you what, man, I missed out on a big-ass wave of some really good music. Jerry opened up my eyes. Now, I met Jerry years ago. I've known him forever. We keep passing by on the road. Misfits always on the road. Stone Cold Steve Austin on the road in the business of pro wrestling. It's always fun to cross paths with someone who's a road warrior and made a living entertaining people. And for a brief period there, Jerry, who was befriended by Vampiro, you guys love my podcast when I had Vampiro on the show. They hooked up with Vampiro. He brought him into WCW. You're gonna hear us talk about punk rock, but you're gonna hear a lot of wrestling talk because Jerry's a big fan. And he was kind of revolutionary down there, presenting some ideas down to those guys in WCW. He has great recall. I can't believe that the guy remembers as much as he did. But he sent me a couple of CDs, and I put them in my little CD player I got at my garage where I do my cardio. And I tell you what, man, the Misfits made some badass music. There's some great tunes. And whether your favorite incarnation of the Misfits was with Glenn Danzig being the lead singer, or Michael Graves is the lead singer, Mike Hideous, or now Jerry Only, whatever it is, I'm not going to argue who was the best singer, when the Misfits were the best, when the Misfits were the most punk, or had the most attitude, or how they kind of changed a little bit more to heavy metal. Man, this is a great conversation with a really cool dude. I dug the stuff that he sent me. He dropped some 411 on the show. We're going to break his show up into 2 parts. So you're going to hear part 1 this Thursday, right now. You're going to hear part 2 next Thursday. And, man, every time Jerry comes over, he sends me a big-ass box of swag, T-shirts, all this Misfit stuff. Sure enough, last night, he walked in, and you'll hear this. He's the only person that's come over here with 2 lawyers and a manager with him. And God dang, I was very impressed. And it was good talking with Jerry. He's a class act. And, man, I owe you some swag, Jerry. As many T-shirts and hats and everything else that you sent me. I appreciate you coming by the house, and it was great talking to you, and it was a great conversation. Safe travels on the road. You'll hear in this conversation, you know, us break down some punk and me asking some questions and talking the wrestling business with a guy that's been around for a long time and actually got inside the business, so he's got a pretty good take on this. But anyway, my conversation coming up with Jerry Only, I think you're going to dig it the most. God damn it, there's a guy that was in the rock and roll business and stayed away from all the drugs and the headaches, hassles, and horse shit and remained clean. And, man, this dude's clear-eyed. I remember he came to the tasting when we opened my beer, November 13th, Swigger Beer Friday there in El Segundo at the Brewing Company. And, man, he showed up. They were working a show in Pomona, and he came up in full gear. And, man, we started drinking at 10:30 together, and I got there at 10. And so, hell, I already had a buzz by the time Jerry got there. And he tried to buy everything we had before we couldn't sell it to the people. And we said, Jerry, we got to keep all this stuff. We got people coming in here. So, anyway, again, appreciate you guys supporting the beer, the Broken Skull IPA. It's off the charts. It's the best IPA in the United States of America, and that's the bottom line because I said so. Anyway, hey, Jerry, good talking to you. This is a 2-part interview.
Steve Austin Unleashed.
We're over here at 316 Gimmick Street. Jerry Only of the Misfits stops by. Last time I saw you was, 2 months ago, and we had the release party for the Broken Skull IPA, and you showed up in full regalia.
Yeah.
You had the devil lock and everything going.
Yeah, it was.
I almost crapped my pants. I was like, holy, because we've crossed paths, several times in the past over the course of time, years and years. You guys have been around for 28 years now.
Well, God, I've known you since 99. I think we were at the Toy Fair in the beginning of February of
Somewhere
2000.
in New York.
Yeah, we were at the Toy Fair, and I had seen you there.
But when I saw you at the release, it was 10:30 in the morning. Here comes Jerry Only. I'm like, holy smokes. Yeah. So we started drinking beer. And I was already nervous because I didn't know how the beer was going to taste to begin with.
It was
because
really good.
The batch just came out. I told Jerry when it came in last time I saw you, there was 3 of you, so I just looked at the one in the middle. That's how I could keep my eyes on you.
Yeah, we had a play that night, and it was about noon. We saw you at 10 a.m., I think. I think they were open.
How did you feel about the time Showtime got there?
Oh, forget it. I had to sit it out for a little bit before we played. It was good. But we knew one of the partners in the company. His father drives for us. He's a driver. So he said, oh, well, Steve's going to be down releasing his beer. But we had sound check. And so what I said, okay, well, look, if we're going to go, I want to show him respect and get ready. And so we got ready and stuff. And then when we were there, you had those big growlers of beer. And I wanted to buy them for Charles Robinson and some of the guys from the WWE. I wanted to buy some of them. I said, well, how many you got? He goes, oh, I got this many. I said, well, give me them all. He said, I can't do that. We got 100 people waiting outside.
That's a true story. Jerry tried to buy almost every piece of beer memorabilia we had.
We drank most of them by noon.
So where'd y'all were playing Pomona that night? Where'd you go after that? How much time y'all spend on the West Coast?
We actually had quite a few shows on the West Coast. I mean, normally we had 2 shows in L.A. At the Roxy, and then we did Pomona. We went up and down. I would say maybe about 8 to 10 shows on the West Coast.
Dude, we were talking about weightlifting before we got on air, and you were asking me how I'm feeling, how I'm training. Dude, you've been doing this for 28 years. You're 56 years old. You still look like $1 million. How you feeling?
Well, actually, I started lifting in 74.
Right, you started living at 74, but how are you feeling right now physically?
I'm feeling really good. I stopped drinking after I hung out with you. And
I've got to stop. Told you I was on a diet. Man, I got to go. Here's a good thing. Coming out with Broken Skull IPA. Here's the bad thing. It's so good you can't help but drink it. Hard to get rid of a drum when you're drinking 22-ounce bombers of a 6.7 beer. Yeah, shameless plug for the Broken Skull IPA.
They were great. And, I've been working out constantly. And
dude, how do y'all find the gym on the road? Because here's the thing. We all get into rental cars, and you've been all over the United States. You've been all over the world. You know where the gyms are. But you guys are in a tour bus.
I don't go to a gym.
So what are you using?
I carry the blocks with me.
What blocks?
The blocks. It's a 90
the dumbbell blocks. So
90-pound dumbbell set. And I carry a sit-up bench and that folds up into a flat bench. So you only do flies. You do curls. You can set it up to the inclined seat to do shoulder press, stuff like that. I got a set in England and I got a set here. So when I hit the ground in Europe, we throw the weights on the bus and we carry them with us. And if we're fortunate enough to find a gym, then we go. And when we find a gym, we focus on back because we don't have a back pull down and a row machine. And we focus on, legs, if we can do legs.
So try to hit the things in the gym that you can't
do. Yeah. And then when we have like an 8 or 10 hour drive through the Alps going from Italy to Spain or something like that, we actually sit there and try and blow out real light curls. We're sitting around in a circle, and one guy does as many curls as he can with a lightweight, hands the weight to the next guy, and it goes around, goes around like playing cards. And that's
dude, I remember one time you guys we crossed paths in New York. It was 99 or whatever. Was Dolan the band at that time?
Yeah.
Because you guys had the platform shoes on. Because man, I walked up to you guys and I was like, holy smokes, man! I look like a midget.
That was my brother. Yeah.
I mean, this is a rib, right? Just a rib. These guys are musicians. They should be wrestlers.
I remember that. I put my arm around your shoulder, and you were like even with me. I said, "Wow, this feels good." That happened with me in The Rock too. I don't know if you remember a guy named Gary Albright. He was Okay, Gary. I was good friends with the Alpha and the Samoans. And what happened was Gary Albright, God rest his soul, had a heart attack. and The Rock was doing photos where if you came down to the benefit show they did in Allentown, you could take a picture with The Rock. So I walk in, and my son, he was a little guy at the time, because he was also, he used to take shots with pictures with the Undertaker, but he came up to the Undertaker's elbow. But he went in and he saw The Rock, and he looked at me, and I looked back at him and I said, I think I could take him. But but you guys are so wide and so rugged. So it's the leg workout show. I mean, The Rock's got legs like a horse.
Rock doesn't even squat because he's got a few knees. No, he loves a leg press. I mean, but there's a guy. I mean, he's got great genetics to begin with, great leg genetics. There's a couple times, man, you tried to put that guy into like Bret Hart's finish or sharpshooter or Boston Crab, and it's like these quads of steel are flexing. And it's like, are you kidding me? Relax a little bit, Rock. He is a big, strong dude.
That's true.
What I was going to ask you though, going back to your formative years, how am I supposed to say? Is it Lodi, New Jersey?
Lodi. Yeah.
Okay, dude. When did you start watching the business of pro wrestling? It seems like you've always been a fan.
Yeah, well, the thing is, back in the day was Bruno Sammartino, Mel Mascaras. Mel Mascaras was my guy.
Really?
Yeah, well, that's the guy I liked. Well, I like the Flash. I like the theatrics of the whole thing. And then I remember taking my son to the Meadowlands to see the Ultimate Warrior wrestle Papa Shango. And a buddy of ours does the tattoos. Paul Booth does the tattoos for the Undertaker. So he was doing tattoos, and my son and our drummer's son, Vinny, went down to go see him get his tattoos done and stuff like that.
So did you ever used to go to any live shows that came to your area?
Not back in the day. I see. Back when I was a kid, I grew up in a machine shop with my dad, and literally I'd be up at 4 or 5:30 in the morning and get to work at 6 and work to 6 at night.
I want to get to that, but the reason I'm asking about this wrestling.
Well, I swear to God, when I tell you the truth, and it's kind of sad, but when my kids were growing up, I worked so much that we never really went anywhere.
Right.
It was tough. But
let's get back to that. Yeah. I want to get to the time you did some business in WCW because you were brought in, or how did you met Vampiro over in Mexico?
Yeah,
Mexico City.
What happened was that, which isn't a bad thought even today, it was that the wrestling industry wanted to bring music into the picture. So Vampiro had teamed up with the ICP
Bring
guys.
It back in, you mean, because of the rock and wrestling connection from, about 83 with Cyndi Lauper, WWF, and all that. Because you're talking...
Bring it back. I could say, you could say that, but...
that was a good match.
But then, that was more mainstream rock and roll compared to, bringing in metal and
combining the two again.
Right, for sure. So what happened was that they had the ICP boys, and they were a little unmanageable, and they were, they just, weren't working out. So Vampiro was a big fan of ours, so he got in touch with us, and we were actually in Minnesota, at Minneapolis, at the First Avenue where Prince did the Purple Rain. We were playing across the street, and Vampiro was in the Target Center across the street at the same night. So he said, hey, would you guys like to be involved? So we actually did our first walk-in, like literally 5 minutes after being asked to be in the WCW. And so we went in and we did our run-in, whatever we did. They said, who are these guys? And it was one of those kind of things. And after that, we were on tour with a band called Gwar, which you're familiar with Gwar?
Yeah.
Okay, they were out of their mind, And we were on tour.
Why were they out of their minds?
Well, because they stay up all night drinking and partying, and then they stop at the place at 6 a.m, and they get out and they bleach their rubber costumes at all these monsters and stuff, and then they do a show, and they're like all night long. They just don't stop. Ripping it up, we're not like that, man. We do finish our show.
Okay, get back to the wrestling story because then I want to get back to lifestyle on the road for you.
Yeah, okay, so what happened was that Gwar held the fort for us. It was Misfits and Gwar was like a co-headline bill. We're playing pretty big shows, and we told them, we said, look, we're going to do this wrestling thing, but we're going to have to pull out Monday and Tuesday, and then I think like on Saturday or Sunday we'd have a pay-per-view that would come along. So the thing was, Gwar held the fort for us, and we went out and we did these shows. So we would literally fly in, and what I would do was we had a truckload of merchandise. So I would get one of those little rolly carts and strap in like 2 boxes of T-shirts, and I'd be dragging them through the airports. And I brought like action figures for Brett and the kids and the guys, and I would always bring merchandise and stuff like that. And so what happened was we started getting involved to a point where we were starting to change the ratings. At the time, the WWF was beating them like for a year and a 1.5 in the ratings. And then all of a sudden, what happened was that we were lining up for the 9 o'clock match, because WCW started at 8 and WWF started at 9. So we were the 9 o'clock match. In front of us was Sting, and behind us was Goldberg. So what would happen was they would take us out for 15 minutes and beat the hell out of me. And my brother's got a bad back, so he'd be like, "Oh yeah, I'll pour barbecue sauce on Oklahoma while Dr. Death kicks your ass up and down the ring." So but the thing was, for 15 minutes we would keep people from switching from the WCW to the WWF. Now, as you know, as I know, the whole program is based on conflicts. It's a storyline. So if you take away the storyline, it's not as exciting to watch the matches not knowing who's arguing with who.
You've got to be invested for some reason, other than just the action.
Right. The action is the
you
action.
Put in a personal issue, a storyline, and you got something to go on.
Right. So if you take away the glossary, you lose the concept of the show. And that's when the whole thing started to turn around. Now, the WCW at the time, they took me in a room and they said, look, which I didn't agree with. They took me in a room and they said, look, you're the leader of the band. We're going to pay you more. And I said, look, we don't operate that way. Okay. Well, they said, no, we don't want the deal unless you do it. And I said, look, all right. I said, let's do it that way. That doesn't matter for me, because it wasn't that much that it was really worth bickering about. But they saw the value in our logos and our skull and our iconic imagery. And they started to undermine me with my guys. And Vampiro had an angle where...
When you say undermine, what do you mean?
Undermine, basically start turning my guys in reality, in real life, I mean, not on the storyline, to be, jealous, because they would send me and Vampiro off to do a show and leave my guys hanging.
Right.
You know what I mean? Now, that's when I got to wrestle with Ming and Lex Luger and all on these house shows that we would do, so that was one of the things that happened. And then it came to a point where... at the very end, I was starting to see through what was going on, and we came to a point where we were at the toy fair, and we had put out our action figures. We had these 12-inch action figures. We got Toy of the Year and all this kind of stuff. It was a really cool time. And I'm standing in the Toys R Us booth on the second floor, looking out over New York City, watching Will Smith get out of the limo with his kid and all this stuff, and my guys ain't there. I'm just like, where the frig are my guys? Can we swear on your show or no?
Yeah, you can do
okay.
It
I said, where the fuck are my guys, man? We're in the main booth in the toy fair with the Toy of the Year, and these guys are supposed to be here backing me up. And I find out that they're going to wrestle at the Nassau Coliseum, okay, and tell the world that Vampiro is going to take my place in my band. You know what I mean? And they're kicking me out to be a WCW band. Now, I found that out because Goldberg was hurt. And he was doing the Toy Biz? Toy Biz. So you've been to the Toy Fair. It's two towers, one on 22nd Street, one on 23rd Street, and they got, or 23rd, 24th, and they got a bridge that goes across, connecting them. So I go up from the second floor from Toys R Us booth, and I go across, because I said, let me go say hi to Bill, make sure he's okay. So I walk into the room, and it's about 3:45 in the afternoon on a Monday night. And I walk in, and I forgot Bill something, his name was, the president of the WCW. And I touch him on the shoulder. I said, yes. Yeah. And I touch him on the shoulder, and he turns around, and he goes, and I go, motherfucker. I said, you guys are up to no good. So I went out into the hallway, and I called John, and I said, John, something's up. My guys ain't here, and the president of WCW just shit his pants when he saw me. I said, you better shut him down. So John got on the line and sent a cease and desist to the WCW, and 20 minutes before they go on the air. And they pull our music, because we had the coolest intro for wrestling. We had this thing called Kong at the Gates with King Kong growling and the whole thing. It was really cool. And they pulled the music, and they made Vampiro switch his armbands in and out. But Vampiro had copied my brother's makeup. Right. And my brother was somewhere with him, pulling this coup d'etat. Right. So what wound up happening was that they didn't pull the makeup, because my brother said it was cool. Right. They didn't have to pull the makeup. But, that was the end of my wrestling career there.
So that was during the time, so you said Bill Shaw was, Bob Dew wasn't there.
It was at the turn
Bischoff?
It was, no, it wasn't Bischoff. He came in later.
Okay.
It was Bill something.
Bill Shaw.
Yeah. Yeah, it's got kind of.
Okay, so then how did you guys? And I'm not asking for dollar figures. How did you go in there and just start negotiating money with these guys? Here's some guys that they see value.
I made about $5,000 a week when we went full boat. Which
yeah, but I mean, what's your negotiating process? Because
I said, "What are you going to give me?"
But here's a guy you got no.
They didn't train me, man. They just beat me up, dude.
Okay, so. You're in the ring. You're working with Dr. Death. You're working with Ming. Ming's one of the scariest guys in the history of the business.
Well, that's why.
Now, when you look and talk to him, he's one of the nicest human beings you will ever know. But if he targets you, if he's mad at you, boy, you really are in a bad way.
I heard he was the most feared guy in the world. Me and him were the tightest. He used to sleep.
He's a sweetheart, but
he used to sleep across 4 fold-out chairs, and his head wouldn't dip. He would be sleeping, and his head would be hanging in the wind. And I'd go up to him. I said, "Ming, I got a whole bunch of shirts. You want me to roll you up a pillow or some shit?" And he would be like, "No, dude, I'm fine." And then Vampiro told me that when they used to wrestle in Mexico, Ming, they would go out on the beach and get drunk, and Ming would climb up the palm trees and pull the coconuts down, then come down and smash them with his hand. And be eating coconuts and drink. And then he's from Tonga, right?
Yeah.
Okay. He used to wrestle his cousin, the Barbarian.
Right.
Okay. And they would wrestle for 3 or 4 days to see who was the toughest guy.
But at the end of the day, even Barb would say, "Yeah, Ming's a guy."
Oh, he is a guy. Yeah, supposedly he got banned from fighting in Japan because they had an issue where the karate people were saying that the wrestling wasn't crap and the karate guys were the bomb. So what happened was they took the karate champ of Japan and put him in a ring with Ming. And when they started the fight, Ming hit him with a cross slap across the face and broke the guy's skull and put him out, and they were just like, "Well, look, we ain't letting this guy get back in with anybody else." But me and him were real tight because Luger used to be a little bit of a jerk to us.
Okay, now you're naming all these times. How long were you officially in the business?
I wrestled 18 shows in 2.5 months.
So what did you think about life on the road with the business of professional wrestling versus the world of rock and roll, punk music, whatever you want to call it? Music versus
you guys
wrestling.
got it tougher than we had, I can tell you that. I tell you what I saw. What I saw was that, for the most part, the wrestlers were pretty much being exploited in a lot of ways. In other words, they take a resource like a young guy, and they beat him down, but they don't cover him going forward, and they don't cover him because I got banged up in a cage match with Dr. Death, right? And I'll tell you about this in a minute.
Dr. Death is another one of the toughest guys. God rest his soul,
story.
He's no longer with us, but Doc was
I love Dr. Death.
Sweetheart.
Yeah. Okay, so what the WCW would do is they would get you, they would fly you. We'd all do a hub in Atlanta.
Yep.
So everybody come to Atlanta. Everybody be on the same plane, which was pretty fun because everybody's, goofing around. Then we'd land, and then they get everybody a car, and everybody'd have a hotel room. So, the thing was that everybody had, every act had somebody they reported to. I reported to Gail Sparks, her name was. She would handle me and Vamp, and she would make sure we had our flights, and we had our hotels, and all this kind of stuff. And I kept telling them, I said, "Look, why don't you guys just get a bus and tell everybody get their ass in the lobby by noon?" I mean, pro football players do it. Basketball players all get on the friggin' bus. And, nobody listens. They don't do it. And so everybody does what the hell they want. So one day, we were when we go to a venue, we need a towel like to wipe our makeup off in our hands and clean our hands and do our crap. So there were no towels; it was like toilet paper. So I see.
You used to be a rock star.
I see. Well, check it out. Check this out. I see Dean Malenko with a towel, right? So I go, "Dean,
one of the funniest guys in the business."
Okay, I say, "Dean, where'd you get the towel?" He goes, "Oh, Jerry, we take it from the hotel." So I said, "Okay, cool." I figured these guys got a deal, right? With the hotel, they got 50.
They got no deal, brother.
Brother, right? So I come walking out, right? 2 towels in my hand and 3 on my neck, right? And Dean is like, no, what are you doing, man? And I say, "What the hell are you talking about?" I said, "You told me that's where we get the towels." So basically, like I was telling my attorney, I said, Ted Turner has people, 40 guys committing felonies every day, stealing towels out of the hotel.
But I heard a rumor that you were like, "Hey, man, we should start a union."
Yes, yeah, I did that.
How far did that get you?
Well, that almost got me killed. Well, look.
You're lucky you're not in the damn.
Let me.
You're lucky you're not in the bayou somewhere.
I had the biggest target on me. Well, I'll tell you what happened. Right? We were.
Dude, for like a 16-day run, you caused a lot of turmoil.
Yeah, I did. They didn't know what to do. Okay, so anyway, so what happened was, because I've been through all kinds of legal bullshit in my life.
I want to get to something.
So I'm like John. I have been handling my own legal stuff for a while. Now I got some big guns here. Thank you. And so what happens is that Dr. Death comes in, right? So me and Vampiro are hanging out. Dr. Death walks into the back door, and he kind of looked like Macho Man's older brother or somebody related to Randy. And I looked at Dr. Death, and I go, wow. I said, is that Dr. Death's like older brother? Or somebody says, is that someone of his family? He goes, no, that's Dr. Death. I mean, he's the real deal, bro. I mean, he's like an incredibly strong and super strong individual.
Shooter.
Okay, so anyway, the first match they put Dr. Death in, they send in Psychosis, they send in a whole bunch of these luchadors. Literally, bro, and I'm not lying, the ambulance took all four of them out, okay? So I go back, I say, man, that's fucked up. These guys, he banged up everybody. He took out the whole high flyers, in one afternoon. So the next week, we're getting on the plane. I tell Vampiro, I go, man, Vamp, I said, I really feel sorry for a stupid son of a bitch who's got to wrestle out. He goes, oh, bro, it's you in a cage, right? So that night,
okay, first of all, how'd they put you and Doc in a cage? Y'all got no beef?
No, what happened was Eddie Ferrero and Vince Russo came in out of the clear blue sky. Okay, what happened was that I guess Ted Turner must have thrown a big carrot under their nose or something like that, where they jumped ship on the WWF and they came to WCW. This is where I almost started the union. Okay, so they come walking in the door, and I'm watching all these young kids all beat up, and I say to myself, they walk in the door, and they're running late for the show. Okay, nobody knows what they're doing. Everybody's walking around the dress. What the hell are we going to do? I don't know who's doing what. So they come in. They sat up all night on their way into the show on the plane, and they typed up scripts. And they walk in the door and they start handing out scripts to everybody. As soon as they put a script in my hand and they close the door, I stood up and I go, "Yo, guys, this is SAG." Man, I said, you guys, you got your health insurance, you got your life insurance, you got whatever the fuck you want, because you got a script. You're on TV and you got a script. I said, you guys are good to go. You know what I mean? I said, if you want, I'll walk out the door now. I'll go drop this on my lawyer in Manhattan that handled my last thing. And I said, you guys will have SAG. I said, there's no way out of this.
They look at you like you're full of shit.
Everybody, the whole room got real quiet, and I was like, holy shit. I said, there's a target on my back now. So, but then my gimmick was, we were fighting Dr. Death in Oklahoma. Oklahoma was Eddie Ferreira making fun of
Jim Ross.
My good friend. Which I didn't know. Yeah, I didn't know that was what was going on, because
we took that pretty serious.
Well, you want to know what? I don't blame you. I didn't know that's what it was about. But the whole gimmick was that Dr. Death was Oklahoma, because he came from Oklahoma and he was All-American wrestler and All-American.
Ed was doing the overtop Jim Ross thing.
Right. So the thing was, I was the piece of meat that got thrown around the ring while these guys were doing their antics.
I was just watching it on YouTube.
It wasn't fun. Yeah. So, the thing was that I went backstage that day, and Sting was there, and we're doing makeup, and my hands are like shaking like this. And I couldn't do my makeup. I said, man, I don't believe I'm doing this shit. So I told Dr. Death, I said, look, man, I said, we got to walk through this, okay? Because, show me what to do, and I'll get through it. So he stampedes me during the afternoon, breaks my ribs, okay? So I got like 3 or 4 broken ribs. And how when you broke your ribs.
Dude, I've broken a couple ribs. To any of my listeners that have never broken a rib, you're talking about real deal pain.
You can't breathe in. You just can't breathe in.
And you know what? Breathing is very imperative to the functioning of our life systems. Yes. So when it hurts to breathe, but you still got to go out and work, that's a real bitch. Yeah, so what happened?
So anyway, Dr. Death comes up to me and he puts his hand. He says, brother, don't sweat it. I got you. And he looks at me, and he takes his hand, and he puts his fingers lightly around my wrist, and he goes, it's a dance. I got you.
He gave you the signal.
He gave me the signal, right? So I knew he had my back. And so what happened was that we go in the ring, and I mess up the first couple of moves, and they tell him go home. You know what I mean? In other words, let's get out of here, right? So I said, doctor says we're going home. I says,
so you knew what going home was, right?
Yeah. I said bullshit. We're going home. So I let we run through a whole bunch of stuff, and I'm awkward with it, and he banging me around, and he gets me on the ground, and he says, okay, I'm gonna throw you. Get out of here. And at the time I wear glasses and I didn't have contacts, so he throws me, and I can't find the friggin' door. So I got to go back in. So I come flying back at him. He goes, what are you doing here? I said, Doc, I can't see the door. So he pounds me on the ground again, and he's arguing with the ref. And I see him looking around. He sees the door. He goes, okay, brother, you're going that way. Get ready. So he grabs me by the back of my neck and the seat of my pants. And he picks me up and he sends me flying. Now, I just want to get out of there. So I aim for the door and I just dive through the ropes. And when I dive through the ropes, I split my head wide open. And my guys had just pulled the chain off because the door was chained.
Yeah.
And I get out. So I beat Doc to death, and the blood is just gushing from my head. So earlier in the night, one of the high flyers, I think it might have been Hoovy, was wrestling this kid from Japan, and he did this big gainer move off the turnbuckle to be onto the floor, and not into the ring, into the floor. And the Japanese guy is supposed to catch him, and the Japanese guy backs out of the way. So Hoovy bangs his elbow. It was either Hoovy or Psychosis bangs his elbow on the ground, but I think Psychosis was in the hospital from last week. So anyway, he bangs his elbow on the ground, and it comes out like a bag of Rice Krispies, like broken glass. So I go backstage and I go, do me a favor, where's the doctor? Somebody's got to stitch me up. You know what I mean? They all look at me with this stupid look on my face.
Dude,
said, well,
this is in what, 99? Okay, yeah, you're still in the Stone Ages.
And I go, and they all look at me like with this stupid look on their face. I said, well, I was so pumped up. I said, you got a needle and thread? I'll do the damn thing myself. And they look at me and they all go, well, you ain't got a needle and thread. So Vampiro drove me and Hoovy to the hospital. And when we got there, his elbow was in shambles. And I told him, I said, man, you better get that done now while it's fresh. Don't let it sit. And he said, oh, man, I can't afford it. I got to go to Mexico to get it done. And I was like, shit,
So what was your exit from the business of pro wrestling then?
Well, they just, after the Starrcade, they didn't call us back. I made this actually a really cool rubber mat that went over the stage with our skull that glowed in the dark. And I said, use this for the Starrcade. Roll this out and hit it with the blue lights. Hit it with the blue lights, it'll glow in the dark. It'd be really cool. But the bottom line was, I think when they tried to make the maneuver, they knew I could see through the bullshit, and that
Yeah, but dude, what the rest of the guys in the band think? Because you're doing the wrestling thing. They're kind of on the fringe a little bit.
Yeah,
they're trying to undermine you, kind of whatever, split you guys up.
Yeah, and then
the rest of the band was probably like, okay, it's a good thing that Jerry's out of this shit, so we can get back and get on the road.
Yeah, but that was at the point where they convinced them, because my brother Doyle wound up hooking up with Randy's old girlfriend, Gorgeous George. And she's just in his ear, oh, you guys should be, WCW band, what are you guys dealing with the Misfits for, blah, blah, blah. And at the time, we had just put out a new album in October, and we were up to about 250, 300,000 record sales. And then they had a WCW compilation that these guys wanted to get on that had Metallica and Limp Bizkit, who was big at the time, and all these other bands, and their sales were less than ours. And I told my guys, when I found out the crap they were trying to pull, I just said, are you guys out of your mind? I said, you think if they got Metallica and Limp Bizkit and these other bands on this compilation record and they only sold 200,000 that you'll ever see a penny if you put a record on there? I mean, you're just getting played, So it actually was like the demise of our band. It took about another year for it to kind of disintegrate based under, that kind of situation. So, whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger, and, we kept going. I mean, we're talking 16 years ago now.
So then was Gorgeous George the reason Doyle left the band?
Yeah, he actually started a band with her, and it was really bad. So,
Are you guys on good terms now? Because he's doing his own thing still.
Huh?
Can we say anything about that? Is he going to come back in?
Well,
because for a while it was a trio.
Well, I offered Doyle a position, because my son's playing in the band now.
Right.
Okay, he's 30 years old, and the kid started with us about 10 years ago, and he's a sound engineer. And he started from the bottom. Like, yeah, you know, if you're really good in the business, you start from sweeping the floor, throwing out the trash, answering the phone, you know, and you grow that way. So my kid has been involved with me in the music ever since he was a little tyke. But after he got out of high school, he went to like a vocational college for 2 years, like a local college. And he said, look, I'm sick of school. I don't want to take psychology anymore, do any of this shit. I want to be sound engineer. And me and my machine shop at the time, I was at an impasse where a lot of the business was leaving the country. My dad was, running the show, and me and my brother weren't on terms, and my brother needed the job. So Doyle was working with my dad. So I just said, I'm going to go more toward the band and toward the music, because the kid wants to do that. So I sent him to Full Sail School down in Orlando.
Yeah, down next to us.
Okay, yes, exactly. And he did really well. He graduated. It cost me about 40 G's to send him to school for a year, and I had to go to IKEA and buy him all the furniture and put him up in an apartment and all this kind of stuff. But he learned how to be very fluent with he makes our records now. So we have a studio in my house, kind of like you sit here doing this. I mean, we have a Pro Tools system and a drum set in my living room where you got a piano. Do you play?
No,
I didn't think so. What do you?
So your son's playing guitar in the band, though, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you teach him?
No, actually, he taught himself. He's better than I am. To make a long story short, I'm meat and potatoes, and he's got all the frills.
I want to go back to the machine shop that your dad started. And so what were y'all doing in his machine shop? What skills do you possess when it comes time to getting in there and doing work?
Well, what happened was when I was growing up, I worked in the machine shop, and we had a knife company like X-Acto. We competed with X-Acto. We had about 40 people working for us. We did about $3.5–4 million a year. My dad raised horses, and he put most of the money that we made into thoroughbred horses, and we built a track illegally in New York State and all this kind of shit. So there's a lot of stories that go on with my dad, but he developed a lot of the cable fittings that people use in industry. And back in 1969, I think I wrote it in my notes for you, he worked on the moonshot.
Jerry's my only guest that ever brought me some notes.
Am I really?
Yeah.
No, I mailed them to you. So you had
whatever, I got them. Okay, so go back to the screws. Was this on the shuttle or the moon?
I made the parts in the shuttle. He made the parts that are still sitting on the moon. So
I got to ask you about that, dude. Come on. Did we really go to the moon?
Yeah, we did, and in a big way.
There's a team of legal experts in this room at 316 Gimmick Street, a couple of lawyers and the manager who's damn near a lawyer. And, of course, I'm talking to Jerry Only of the Misfits, who's damn near a rocket scientist.
We're on.
Does everybody here believe we went to the moon?
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
It's not that far away,
I guess
bro.
I'm the only down Thomas. Okay, let me ask you a question, all you smart asses. If we've been there once, how come we have not been back?
Because there's
now don't say because we did it once.
There's things on the moon. That's why we don't go back.
Why have we not gone back to the moon, Jerry?
Well, there's the moon. They don't think it held a lot of resources, but in the meantime, there is some kind of the moon is made out of like this. Some kind of a carbon.
I smell complete 100% bullshit.
It's an energy source. They got some.
All right, stop. Dude, one of y'all have a better explanation than Jerry, because this guy's full of shit. Christina,
There's nothing good there. Why do we have to go back? There's no source.
Well, I can say that about a lot of the towns I played.
There actually is. There actually is.
I was just kidding with you, Jerry.
I know.
Respect. I'm ribbing you. Yeah, you spent 16 days in the business. I can rib you, all right? Hey, it's what we do here at 316 Gimmick Street. This is a podcast. It's supposed to be entertaining.
And it is.
The Steve Austin Show. The Steve Austin Show.
Geico asks, how would you love a chance to save some money on insurance? Of course you would. And when it comes to great rates on insurance, Geico can help. Like with insurance for your car, truck, motorcycle, boat, and RV. Even help with homeowners or renters coverage. Plus, add an easy-to-use mobile app, available 24-hour roadside assistance, and more. And Geico is an easy choice. Switch today and see all the ways you could save. It's simple. Go to geico.com or contact your local agent today.
We're back here with Stone Cold.
Check 1 2. The loud guy on the other microphone is Jerry Only. Boy, I tell you what, you used to singing you got this voice that carries. But you're about the. Let me go through my.
The only guy with
Wikipedia
notes.
page.
I'm the only guy with notes.
Dude, when the Misfits first started, Glenn Danzig, Jimmy Battle, Manny Martinez. And now you're the only original basic member still left.
Yeah, for sure. But, I mean, the first recordings and stuff we did was me, Manny, and Glenn played keyboard. So that was something we put out. That was on a label called Blank Records that we had done. And what happened was that there was a band called Pear Ubu, which had come out back in the day. And they had put out, Mercury Records had made their own Blank record. So I remember, you're going to like this story. I went to go see, I was going to tell you guys this. I went to go see Volbeat the other day, good friends of mine from Denmark. And Cliff Bernstein from Q Prime was in there. And Cliff Bernstein at the time was in charge of Mercury Records. So I go in to talk to my boys, and I'm hanging out with him, and they start talking about something between themselves. So Cliff comes over to me and goes, I got a story for you, because I'm all in gear. He knows who I am. So he goes, when I worked at Mercury Records, he says, I get a phone call, and some guy gets on the phone and goes, listen, motherfucker, how much money you going to give me? And it was Glenn calling him up because he had used Blank Records and we owned Blank Records. So what happened was that in exchange for Blank Records to continue their project, they gave us studio time, which we made the Static Age album out of. And, we didn't have enough time. I wound up kicking in some money at the end to make it happen. But I was leaving high school at the time when I started the band. The band started in March with me, Manny, and Glenn. And I was going to go play football for Rhode Island. I was a quarterback. I used to be able to throw 60 yards and stuff like that. But back in the day, they didn't have timing patterns and all this shit. You had to wait for your guy to outrun the other guy. So, I was going to go play football for Rhode Island. But I had the machine shop and the family business. And I really liked the band. And I was like, fuck it, I'm going to try this. I'm going to try and make the band go. So we recorded this album, and nobody wanted it. It was insane to me that nobody wanted it. We went to Chrysalis Record that had Billy Idol and Blondie. We went to Sire Records that had the Ramones and Richard Hell. And we went to... We took it everywhere, and everybody said, get the hell out of here. So now it winds up in the future, let's fast forward 25 years. The songs off the record are covered by Guns N' Roses and Metallica. And so, it wound up being like one of the classic punk records of all time, and nobody wanted it. So then as the band progressed, the first lineup, we had switched the guitar. I saw the Ramones. And when I saw the Ramones, I realized that we needed a guitar player and not a keyboard player. Okay, the keyboard player was this artsy-fartsy shit that was a New York scene, and we just didn't fit in because we were a bunch of guys hitting the weights and, hitting the guitars hard and breaking shit, and everybody else was shooting dope and screwing up. And we were like, well, we don't want to be part of that New York CBGB scene because everybody was dropping dead around us. So what we did was we came up with the image for the band, came up with the Devil Lock, came up with the uniform look, the spikes, the leather.
Explain the Devil Lock to my listeners, because I've researched it extensively. I know what it is.
Have you now?
Yes, sir. Go ahead. Talk about the Devil Lock, because it's a strand of hair coming back.
Yeah, okay. So what happened was that when we in the first carnation of the band, while we had the original guitar player before my brother, we were looking at the English punk, the Sex Pistols and Sid Vicious and all those people, and they were very colorful. They all had pink hair or green hair and pins through their nose and all this crap. So I had done my hair like a bright blue, like a deep blue, though. It wasn't that Miami Dolphins color like a lot of people got. It was like a dunker, when you get blue jeans brand new, that real thick color. So I had done my hair that color, and that summer we really didn't have any shows, so it started to grow out on me. And I started combing it because Elvis had that little curl in the front. Right. So I was taking it from Elvis or Superman, doing the little curl. But then it hit the middle of my nose, and we still weren't playing. So after I saw the Ramones and got that whole, we need to have that dark black leather look, that motorcycle guy look, I did it black and just started combing it that way. And then when it was down past my chin, it was a unique situation. It's funny because my older daughter cuts my hair, and she's like I tell her, I said, you're kind of fortunate. You got one of the most famous haircuts that you're in charge of in the world. So
now you got this team of lawyers surrounding us. Did you patent the devil lock?
I did.
Can we say but you are the inventor of the devil lock?
We can say
Dude,
that.
what happened with Glenn Danzig and you guys? You've told the story a million times, but he wasn't happy with the musical direction. You wanted to go a different way. What happened?
Well, what happened was that
straight up.
Yeah, we had come to a point in the road where it was make or break for the band. I had a little girl, and we were going to be going on the road, and I told him, I said, look, if we're going to go on the road, I got to make a living out of this. I can't just walk away from my business and leave my wife and my kid home. So the shows were scarce. The money wasn't around. And he was being discontent with where we were. And at the same time, I was getting to a point where if we weren't going to really take it serious and continue along the lines that the band was going, that there was no reason for us from an artistic standpoint or from a financial standpoint or from any point to continue going down the road. So things were getting tense because Robo...
Well, wasn't there also some internal struggle because he wanted to go a little bit darker, blacker, and you wanted to go...
That actually happened after. Well,
okay.
we did this album that was called Earth AD. Now, what happened was that... when you're out in the field, you wind up seeing things that inspire you that all of a sudden are groundbreaking. And, you want to be a part of it and you want to add it to your arsenal. So we had done the Walk Among Us album, which is like, I would say, the quintessential. Is that how you say it?
That's how you say it. I don't know what it means.
I don't know. I got people who went to school here. I didn't go.
Yeah.
So anyway, so the quintessential album, because it was a sci-fi album. It had themes like I Want Your Skull. It had I Turned Into a Martian, Astro Zombies, All Hell Breaks Loose, classic tunes. And so what happened was that I felt the band should remain in the horror genre and just become more advanced and more sophisticated in what we do. And we wound up touring with a band called the Necros. At the time, Black Flag was coming around, Minor Threat. All of a sudden, you were getting this skinhead, really thrashy, pounding, aggressive music. And we were the people that they looked up to because we were the guys who created the scene that they were now invading. So we were on road with these guys, and we saw it, and we felt it. And we were just like, we felt the blood pump through our veins. So we wrote this album called Earth AD. And it is just an ass-ripping album. And it was so advanced, and I'll say this to this day, the earth hasn't caught up to it yet. It inspired Slayer, it inspired Manson, Anthrax, all those bands, Pantera. All these bands looked at Earth AD, and it became the Rosetta Stone of the metal that became the 80s. Okay, but it imploded our band because it was just so... disruptive and so aggressive that there was nowhere for us to go. We had put ourselves so far out into the darkness already, and that's when we came to a point in the road where Robo, who was playing drums for Black Flag, joined our band because he got stranded in England because he's Colombian. And he couldn't get back into the country. And Googie, the drummer that we had for the Walk Among Us album, was always fighting with Glenn because Googie had a job, and when he left his job, he needed money, and Glenn didn't want to pay him.
Right.
So, there was no money to pay him. So Googie and Glenn always fought. So Googie knew all our shit, and then Robo joined the band. And when Robo joined the band, we did this thrash album and toured with Black Flag, and did, in other words, we were in the trenches with the real meat eaters. But at the same time, the Earth AD album had more to it than just aggression. It had brilliance in rhythms and melodies beyond comprehension of what people were doing. It was just like Die Die My Darling, which Metallica covered, came from there. Mommy, Can I Go Out and Kill Tonight was on there, which is just ripping shit. And so what happened was that we were... Robo was living with me and working in my machine shop, and my mom was like, hey, look, Robo's been here like 3 or 4 months or something. He's older than me, and you guys go to work. He's got to go to work. So, we took him to work. My mother didn't like being home alone with Robo. Not that he's a bad guy. Right. Just she felt weird about it. So anyway, I told Glenn, I said, look, my mom's kind of, getting a little bit, freaked out about Robo. Can you do me a favor? Put him up till we go out on the road. So, it was a situation where Robo was working every day. And then when he would come back, Glenn would want him to do stuff. And I mean, when we work at work, we don't fuck around. We work.
Right.
You come home and you want to drop on the couch. So, Robo would say, look, man, I worked all day. And Robo was a beer drinker, so he'd buy a 6-pack of hams, because it cost him $1.50. And he'd shoot down these beers. years, and Glenn got aggravated with him. So Robo and Glenn wound up arguing, and Robo split right before we were supposed to go to Germany to tour this Earth AD album for the Germans, who at the time were primed up for something like this. I mean, we would have taken...
So then how do you supply drummer for this advanced material?
We would have taken Europe by storm. And there was a month before we were supposed to go, and we needed plane tickets. So I told Glenn, I said, look, I have to work at the shop 18 hours a day to buy our plane tickets. If you can't get along with Robo, you got to get Googie back. And he said, I don't want to be in the band if I got to deal with Googie. And that, kind of made me think, well, look how far we fought. You know what I mean? If you don't want to play with Googie, I mean, what am I doing here? I mean, this is where we need to do. This is the sacrifice we need to make today to pull that shit off. You don't want Googie when we get back from Germany, I'm cool with it. Don't worry about it. You know what I mean?
After we get back.
After we get back. All right. So what happened was he said, I'm working with Googie. I said, here, because we rehearsed at my house in the garage. I said, here's the keys to the garage. Go to New York and find us a drummer. You got 3 weeks to get somebody ready to go.
Okay, but how was Glenn to deal with back in? Because he can be somewhat temperamental, and I know Glenn. Met him just a couple of times.
I know.
So I like his music, like y'all's music, but he's a force to reckon with. I can imagine you were as well. So did you guys clash?
Well, what happened was it was kind of sad because it all ended in one moment. You know what I mean? We got a new drummer, and we went all the way to Detroit, and it was a young kid, and the kid was horrible. And I said, well, where'd you get this kid? He goes, I picked him because he had a leather jacket and half his head shaved. And I'm like, well, what the fuck does that got to do with drums? Do you know what I mean? So the kid got drunk, couldn't play the show, and we went and Doyle, first song, taps the kid on the shoulder and says, get the fuck out of here. And the drummer from the Necros hops up, and he knew all our shit and blew the stuff out. So we get backstage, and I said, Glenn, look, we got to get Googie or we're not going to be able to do this. He said, well, I'm done. And I said, well, okay, I guess you're done. And that was the end of it. And it actually ended in one night. So
it was the end of it for what, some 9 or 10 years?
Not forever. So
well, for that, but till y'all reformed and got back on the road.
Yeah, at the time, I went back and I worked in the machine shop, and we started building guitars. That's when I started learning how to make guitars and stuff like that. I
cut you off earlier when we started talking about the parts that were going into outer space and on the moon. Your actual skills in a machine shop.
Yeah,
you can make guitars.
Yeah.
And you're making them out of steel, or they're not?
No, we make them out of wood and graphite and stuff like this. Different composite materials. But we make some really, fancy stuff. And it comes down to me, putting priorities in kind of a perspective where, I realized that, my family relies on the company and stuff like that. So that's when we started working on other projects. It took us about 13 years to get the band back.
All right, folks, I'm going to step in right here. We're going to stop the interview. We're going to pick it up part 2 next Thursday with how Jerry Only found Michael Graves and got him to join the Misfits. Coming back next Thursday with part 2 of Jerry Only of the Misfits.
This has been a Podcast One production. Download new episodes of The Steve Austin Show every Tuesday at PodcastOne.com. That's PodcastOne.com.
Stream the biggest movies and TV shows for free on Pluto TV. Watch movies like Titanic and G.I. Joe: The Rise of Cobra, plus TV shows like CSI and Star Trek: The Next Generation. Starting this month, check out the 24/7 Stargate channel exclusively on Pluto TV. Plus hundreds of channels and thousands of movies and TV shows absolutely free. Download the free Pluto TV app on your favorite streaming device and start watching today.
Look out! Join me every week for the Michael Irvin Podcast. The Michael Irvin Podcast, the MIP.
Now the MIP exists. The MIP.
Okay, I got to make sure you got something to show.
What? Where's Michael? He's holding out. What do you mean he's holding out?
Fine. Hey, it's the Playmaker. I ain't available right now. I said the Playmaker's not available for you.
I will give you my Playmaker of the Week. Take the spotlight sometimes off of all these quarterbacks and put the spotlight on some of those guys that make the quarterbacks. T-I-R-E-D, put it together. T-I-R-E-D. I get higher. That's the love.
the Michael Irvin I love right there,
What's
man.
that?
Yeah.
Download new episodes of the MIP, the Michael Irvin Podcast, every Thursday on Apple Podcasts, PodcastOne, and Spotify.
That's the Michael Irvin Podcast. I am the playmaker, Michael Irvin. Yo, what's good? It's your boy, Big Brother Jake, a.k.a. Jake Warner.
My government name.
Check it out. I host a show called the Big Brother Jake Podcast, and I've taken my talents to the biggest and baddest platform on the planet. That's right, baby. PodcastOne. My show is unique as I talk about everything. Life, sports, entertainment, being a single dad juggling several jobs. I'm a hot mess, but it's damn entertaining. Subscribe and review now on Apple Podcasts and listen on PodcastOne or wherever you get your podcasts.